Over the past decade or so, there has been an uproar over the representation of women in media. And because modern Hollywood isn't content with writing good characters, we now have the strong female character. This is a way of balancing the scales, and of course, winning back their audience. An initiative to create a new wave of strong, intelligent, resilient, independent, badass females in cinema. Sweet. I like women. Women are awesome. So what's the issue?
They're all fucking shit!
This isn't anything new. People have been carrying on about this for a while. But I'm going to do something revolutionary here. You ready? Maybe these characters aren't shit because they're women. I think that maybe Hollywood is so concerned with making their female characters unbreakable and immaculate that they basically forgot to, write them properly. What I'm saying is pretty much every single time someone tries to do a strong female character today, they wind up making them a rapist, a mass murderer, or a Mary Sue. But this wasn't always the case. We once had a plethora of great female badasses who hardly ever committed atrocities. One of the easiest examples of this is Sarah Connor, the protagonist of the two good Terminator movies, and another one which I refuse to acknowledge. To many, she's the definitive female badass, responsible at least in part for the defeat of not one, but two futuristic robotic killing machines. She overcame the boundaries of her squishy flesh, and through sheer determination prevented the destruction of humanity. She's a woman, that much is categorical, and I'd say that taking out murderbots conveys a certain element of strength. On the surface, it seems that she fits the brief. She's tough, no nonsense, smart, brave, and independent. She's definitely capable of kicking the shit out of men. So why don't I hate her? How come she's always brought up in these arguments? During the events of Terminator, Sarah Connor is an average 19-year-old college student, working as a waitress to pay the bills. She has normal friends, normal dreams, a normal job, and a normal life. It's all abruptly turned on its head when she finds herself being hunted. Someone or something is killing everyone sharing her name, and she's next on the list. People around her start dying, including her mother and roommate/best friend. Before long, she finds herself cornered, staring death in the eye. At the last second, she's rescued by Kyle Reese, a scruffy stranger she'd have probably crossed the street to avoid on a normal day. Realizing that he's her only hope from certain death, she goes with him. He explains that humanity as she knows it is going to be wiped out by killer machines, and that the last hope for their race comes in the form of her future son. In this moment, her whole perception of reality and her place in it has changed. Her life will never be the same. She reacts accordingly. This teenage girl is forced to watch as scores of people die, knowing that she could be next at any moment. She finds comfort in Kyle, asking him questions about his life in the future, and prying into his humanity. They fall in love. And for one night at least, they can forget about their troubles. The chase resumes, and soon the Terminator has them at a standoff. Kyle sacrifices himself in a last-ditch effort to save Sarah, but it does little more than buy her time to mourn him. She's been robbed of her life, robbed of her family and friends, and now robbed of both her lover and protector. She's now faced with a seemingly unstoppable enemy, alone. And she's pissed. She overcomes, spitefully mocking the Terminator as she crushes it. She finds a new resolve, determined to raise her son to be what he's meant to be. Humanity's savior. 11 years later, she's found herself in a mental institution, her desperate warnings of humanity's demise falling on deaf ears. She spends her days plotting her escape and training. It's clear that she's not the same woman. She's stronger, leaner. She has a dark experience behind her eyes. She's scarily familiar. By now, her son is 10 years old. A resourceful and streetwise preteen who can hack ATMs, reload weapons, and most importantly, take care of himself. His mother has been hard on him. He's been trained from birth. Sarah executes an escape, using clear tactical skill. She's willing to threaten and even harm people for the sake of her goals. She's confronted by John, accompanied by a very familiar face. Here she shows fear. Genuine terror born of trauma. John assures her that the T-800 is there to help. She's naturally suspicious, but once again she's left no choice. During the escape, she continually takes charge, showing great initiative to protect her son above her own safety. She even berates John for putting himself at risk to save her.
Are you alright? Yeah. Come here. It was stupid of you to go there. God damn it, you have to be smarter than that. You almost got yourself killed. You cannot risk yourself, even for me. Do you understand?
I had to get you out of that place.
I didn't need your help. I can take care of myself.
Sarah watches her son bond with the machine as the father he never had, but she struggles to separate this T-800 from the one that came for her all those years ago. It tells her about Miles Dyson, the man whose technology will lead to Judgment Day. In Mexico, the three restock at one of Sarah's stockpiles, a testament to her newfound resourcefulness. She sees Armageddon in everything, and everyone. Even in her dreams, she's reminded that the life she knows is poised on the knife's edge, doomed. And she wants it to stop. She packs up and sets out after Dyson. She blows his house apart before breaking in and pointing a gun right in his face. She prepares to kill this father in front of his child for a crime he's yet to commit, fulfilling her purpose and saving the world. But she can't. She refuses to become the Terminator. Instead, our heroes set off on a mission to stop Judgment Day by destroying Dyson's work. And they succeed, with great sacrifice. But the T-1000 has found them. They're chased to a smelter where Sarah is injured. The T-1000 tortures and threatens her, demanding that she lure John. She refuses, once again willing to sacrifice herself. It disguises itself as Sarah to try to trick John, calling for help. John is naturally skeptical of this. That doesn't seem like Sarah. And then she pops around the corner, wielding a fucking shotgun. That's more like it. She fights off the T-1000, just long enough for Arnie to finish it off. She then bids farewell to an old adversary turned new friend, to secure a better future for humanity. Saying farewell to years of pain and fear, with a handshake and a thumbs up. Having completed her mission, course-correcting humanity's dark fate, and for the first time since she was 19 years old, she can look forward to a bright new future with her son. There are so many details that I've had to omit for the sake of time, but you get the picture. This is not only a functional character, it's an exemplary one. Every facet is consistent, effective, and thematic, all topped off by a brilliant performance. The movies themselves are great, but that's for another video. The point is, we have here a character that is strong, female, and fantastic. Time for a comparison then? Diana Prince, better known as Wonder Woman, is one of the more prevalent heroes that's been shat onto the silver screen lately. I'm aware that this character has a long and rich history, but I'm focusing purely on the DCEU incarnation. So any counter-arguments from previous adaptations, including the comics, are null and void. Diana is an Amazon, a race of warrior women from the anti-phallic hidden island of Themyscira. She's incredibly powerful, even by Amazonian standards, possessing super strength, agility, speed, and the ability to deflect bullets with her braces, despite not knowing what guns are. She also has a lasso which forces people to tell the truth as a means of non-violent confrontation. Keep that one in mind. Diana has lived a very sheltered life. Her mother, the Queen, has kept much from her, and as a result, she knows almost nothing about the world beyond her island. She has no concept of wages or jobs, she doesn't understand men, she has a childishly simplified understanding of war wherein the opposite side is just inherently evil for reasons, and yet she still presents herself as an absolute paragon of virtue and morality. She has, however, read 12 volumes of textbooks on reproductive biology on an island of only women, and she's multilingual. so it's cool when the plot needs it, I guess. She doesn't know why people hold hands, though. She is thrust into the midst of World War I when an American pilot shows up and tells her the Germans are bad. The Germans then show up and start killing everyone for no reason at all, because they have to be bad. Diana is convinced that it's Ares that is making the Germans bad, and she sails across the ocean in a sailboat to kill him. Too bad that's going to take months. Never mind, they're in London. Whilst in London, Diana proceeds to high-road the complexities of war to a room full of generals, compares being a secretary to slavery, relinquishes her most valuable asset to a stranger, and is a bit of an idiot in general. But we do have the most basic aspect of her character, simple as it may be. She thinks that war is bad. She abhors death and violence, and her only goal is to defeat the living manifestation of war. Let's see how that pans out. She finds herself in the trenches, bitterly lamenting the tragic loss of life. So following this moronic sequence where the German army just forgets how to shoot, she proceeds to murder a bunch of German soldiers. This woman, with godlike abilities, absolutely shit-rocks scores of Germans who have almost no chance of fighting back. The power imbalance is staggering. I don't care if you can't see blood. Blunt force trauma is a thing, and these guys are all kinds of fucked up.
Patty Jenkins said this about Diana. She doesn't punch people in the face. That's not the most effective way to stop something from happening. And she doesn't stomp on somebody's chest to get information. She's not that kind of person.
See that? That was a field medic she just murked. What's worse is that she's only doing this because the Allies made it to her first. Could have very easily been the other way around. Oh wait, I forgot the Germans were just evil for no reason. And because this is World War I, there's a good chance that a lot of these soldiers are conscripts or underage. Because World War I isn't exactly the best setting for good versus evil. It's quite a morally complex little affair. But she looks like she's having a grand old time, just committing war crimes with the boys. So after she's done killing teenagers, the townspeople all simp for her, and she gets to enjoy Chris's pine. Thought men weren't for pleasure, Diana? Huh? Huh? Do they have Vagisil on Themyscira? She then goes on to chuck a tantrum because he reminds her that things might be just slightly more complicated than her child brain can process. So she murders the guy that she thinks is Ares, and to her shock, war continues. Based Chris once again explains human nature to her, and it seems to sink in for the first time. But then the real Ares appears because Diana isn't allowed to be wrong. Chris Pine blows up, and she loses her shit and murders several more German peasants before refusing to execute a war criminal responsible for mass-scale death via chemical warfare. Because she believes in love. She's not a killer, like Ares. She fires a Care Bear death laser through his chest, killing him. She decides to mourn her lover by refusing to help anyone ever again and giving up on humanity because they're not pure, even though she was right and they were under the influence of a war god. Did I mention that she rapes a guy in the sequel? Yeah, Chris Pine comes back to life by possessing some random dude's body, and they have sex. They use a random man's body as a vessel with which to fuck. Diana Prince roots a man's body while he is not in a state to give consent. I don't give a fuck if Patty Jenkins calls it a body swap gag. There is no swap. Chris Pine doesn't have a body. It's his body, and he cannot consent. That's rape. Patty Jenkins wrote rape into her movie, and now we all have to pay for it. Other sins committed in Wonder Woman 84 include, but are not limited to, further reckless endangerment of the enslaved handsome man, tantrums because she may be forced to actually sacrifice something, more senseless grunt murder despite refusing to kill the actual villains, and guilting the entire American population to relinquish their wishes, even though she was forced to exorcise Chris Pine and saved handsome man from her own wish. Not that his well-being factored into that decision. No, little girl, I don't care that you wished for your leukemia to be cured. The truth is beautiful. I know you wished for your parents to not be dead, little Bruce Wayne, but you can't be selfish. I sacrificed a booty call that I had in the 1910s because no true hero is born from lies. This only covers her actions in 2 of her appearances. I can guarantee you that they do not improve. This character is fucked. Her powers are inconsistent and unbalanced. Her moral compass is juvenile at best, borderline villainous at worst. She doesn't seem to possess common sense, and whatever shallow motivations we're given are repeatedly contradicted whenever the plot needs them to be. She wants to end war. By participating in a war, providing an unfair advantage to one side and significantly increasing casualties on the other. But of course, she's right in the end, because these movies are terrible. Compare this to a character with a strongly defined set of motivations and values that influence her actions. Someone whose abilities are firmly developed and consistent and possesses the level of knowledge that someone in her position should have. A good character versus a bad one. Yet, Wonder Woman is commonly touted as superior for her inspiration to women. Yes, the marketing for this character had a strong feminist leaning, and there are scenes dedicated to the girl power message. On the surface, she is a strong woman meant to serve as an inspiration, but that crumbles under even the slightest bit of scrutiny. I wonder if there might be a pattern to this. Buffy Summers is your average teenage girl. Except that she's the Slayer, a mystical warrior with supernatural abilities passed down through history, with one purpose: kick demon ass. Buffy has very defined character traits. She's headstrong and rebellious, with a penchant for facing her problems head-on and rejecting much of the dogma that comes with being the Slayer. Her abilities can often make her cocky, as she's able to dispatch most threats with little effort. But that doesn't mean that she's invincible. She's fiercely determined and dedicated, when she wants to be, and she's never complacent in defeat. Buffy frequently laments the duties of the Slayer, trying her best to maintain a semblance of normality. Her powers aren't free after all, and she has to forego a lot of teenager stuff just to train and hone her skills. Her position seeps into every aspect of her life. Her family, her friends, her schooling, her relationships, and later her work life are all dominated by her role as the Slayer, often forcing her to make horrible compromises and sacrifices. She loses several friends, her mother, the love of her life, and even dies twice herself, going so far as to make it to heaven after giving her own life, just to be ripped out and tossed back to Earth. This all takes a toll on Buffy, of course, but no matter how hard she gets hit, she always gets back up. These traits define her actions throughout the series. The audience always has a clear understanding of the action that she takes and why, because of how clear and developed she is. And if you want to talk about gender roles, the position of the Slayer is always held by a woman in universe. It's the definition of a power reversal, and you get a lot of woman hitman content if you like the superficial stuff. Let's bite into some low-hanging fruit and talk about Rey.
Rey Skywalker.
No, just Rey. Her primary issue as a character is that she isn't one. She's been stamped as the official benchmark for a Mary Sue, and there's good reason for that. She actually doesn't start out too bad. She's a scavenger on a desert planet who's fighting just to make ends meet, while she waits for her parents, who abandoned her there, to come back for her. She doesn't take easily to strangers, but she's got a soft heart that shines through, underpinned by a sense of adventure. That's all fairly compelling, but unfortunately it's dropped completely after the first act of TFA. She spends the rest of her time in the series doing protagonist things like advancing the plot and doing good stuff. She is immensely powerful, more so than any other character in the universe, until she isn't, and then is again. But this power isn't earned or explained in any meaningful way. It doesn't influence or change her character. She can just simply do thing. Her core motivation seems to be whatever the plot needs it to be, and her powers will always grow to match that. The only consistent through line to this character is her lineage, but that's a complete shit show. We're told it's important, and then it's not. And then it's important, and then it's not. And then it's really fucking and then it's not. She doesn't have any challenges, any consistent motivations, any flaws, any hard-fought victories, frustrations, or moral complexities, any interesting thoughts or opinions even. Take her out of the story, and she's got fucking nothing. A lot of people are quick to call Daisy Ridley's performance bland and uninteresting, but to be fair, it's quite difficult to play a character that doesn't exist. But hey, I am comparing her to a character from the 90s. Maybe my references are a little bit dated. How about a more recent one? Natasha Romanoff is the Black Widow, a covert operative skilled in manipulation and infiltration. Her life has been dominated by deception, spending her early years as a KGB assassin before defecting to S.H.I.E.L.D. The audience is even introduced to her manipulating Tony Stark under a false identity, to further underpin this aspect of her character. This makes it difficult for her to form relationships with many of her close allies, who are slow to trust her. Her friends are few and far between. We're given glimpses into her dark past, and it's something that she has trouble reconciling. As part of her training, she was sterilized, removing the chance that she might care for something other than her mission. Over the course of nearly a decade, we watch this character grow, forming friendships and changing for the better, slowly leaving her old ways behind, and showing her true self. This heavily influences the decisions she makes, and it's greatly satisfying to watch. This journey culminates in her sacrificing her own life to save her best friend, her newfound family, and for a brighter future. It's tragic, but so fitting. So Marvel can write strong female characters then. Let's check out another one.
Fuck!
Veers is a member of the Star Force, a Kree unit of warriors who travel the universe doing good. Why is she fighting in a war? Fuck knows. Veers suffers from amnesia, unable to remember anything from up until a few years ago. She's super powerful. Fist lasers, super strength, the whole 9 yards. After beating up some space goblins, she is stranded on Earth, where she begins slowly uncovering her memories. Why are her memories suddenly coming back to her? Fuck knows. We gather through these flashbacks that she's from Earth. She has friends, she's a pilot, and that men were mean to her. What does any of this mean for her character? Fuck knows. That's her whole character shat onto a plate. Her name is Carol Danvers, and she's a good person. Explains the token friend. But oh no, it turns out that the Kree are the bad guys, and they've been lying to her, and she has to stop them. But hang on, these people were her friends, right? She spent so much time among their society. She wouldn't just change her entire viewpoint over less than a day, surely. I mean, what if she's not the only one that's been lied to? Maybe she could start a revolt. She could help save other people like her from the Kree Empire, topple the whole civilization from the inside. She could really help people here. Gleeful mass murder it is then. Thanks, Carol. And if atrocities on a grand scale aren't enough for you, how about we check out the deleted scene where a man flirts with her, she mashes his carpals, and steals his motorcycle. Yep, might be deleted, but they filmed it, edited it, and released it. And nobody saw a problem with that, at all. I've seen people try to defend this as a toppling of the power divide between men and women.
Sexual harassment.
She's a fucking laser-powered alien goddess who almost beat Thanos in a 1v1, and he's a normal dude who thought she was attractive. She already had all the power and she used it to cripple and rob him. She's the fucking villain!
There are better hills to die on, guys. Come on. What is it with these fucking feminist movies and making me feel sorry for the men that they're victimizing? At least Rey didn't do anything really morally bankrupt and fuck. Oh no. That wasn't very nice. Ellen Ripley is another one of those classic characters that gets brought up in these discussions. Because she's a fucking queen. She's the sole survivor of an alien attack, managing to defeat the beast, but not before it killed her entire crew. She comes out of cryo sleep 57 years in the future, and her first question is of her daughter. She'd promised her that she would be home in time for her 11th birthday, but she's already been dead for 2 years, at the age of 65. Ripley tries to warn people about what happened, but she's dismissed and written off. When her warnings come to pass, she's approached to act as a civilian advisor to the military. She initially refuses, terrified of reliving the horror, but she comes around, hoping to put the nightmares behind her. She finds Newt, the last survivor, horribly traumatized. A familiar sight. Ripley immediately tries to calm her, forming a maternal bond. When the shit hits the fan and hordes of xenomorphs begin ripping into the soldiers, Ripley steps into a leadership role, using her experience and knowledge to save as many lives as she can. When a xenomorph queen threatens Newt, Ripley tells it to fuck right off and beats the shit out of it with a walking forklift. She cares about this girl. This is her daughter now. You don't fuck with Ripley's daughter. So having faced her fear and thrown it into the void, Ripley can rest with her new companions. I'm sure it all worked out for them. On the other hand, what is there even to be said about this dumpster fire? Somebody decided it was a good idea to take one of the most blatantly evil Disney villains, whose entire motivation was to make a coat with the skin of over 100 puppies, and make her a sympathetic protagonist. They do this by having her mother snoot booped off a cliff by Dalmatians. She believes that this is her fault, because she totally should have seen that coming, and it's only when she finds out that no, it's her boss that was responsible for her mother's hilarious death, that she starts acting like a raging bitch. She just becomes an over-the-top thunder cunt, and everyone still loves her because she has a sad story. Even the villain, who cartoonishly hates everybody, likes her. Even the puppos that were trained to body check people off ledges decide that they love Cruella. Because why the fuck not? And then she finds out that her boss is her mum, and that's the thing that snaps her back to reality, at least a bit. Fuck. It just feels wrong criticizing this movie. It's like pissing on a quadriplegic. It can't fight back, and it's suffered enough. Hell, even the good characters aren't safe. Remember Wanda Maximoff? The glass cannon that was responsible for the creation of Ultron and a civilian catastrophe in Lagos? Remember how racked with guilt she was over that? Remember how her villainous origins and her awesome power made it difficult for people to trust her, until she found solace and companionship in another black sheep, a silver lining born out of one of her biggest mistakes. Remember how cool she was? Well, she enslaved an entire town, robbing them of their personalities and freedoms, so that she could live out a fantasy to cope with grief. Worse than that, we're told that this experience is immensely painful and akin to torture. She has also segregated their children, keeping them trapped in some kind of dreamscape. So she does this, only releases them when she's pretty much forced to, mercilessly sentences the begging antagonist to the same fate, and then flies off into the sunset with no consequences, and she's still framed as the hero. Why? Because her sex doll had its battery ripped out. Grief is a very normal part of human life. Everybody deals with it in different ways. Not sure that torture and enslavement counts as one of the acceptable ones. Why did you go to all this effort just to fuck up a perfectly good character retroactively? Come to think of it, that happens quite a bit. Don't you fucking dare. Why are all these writers so hell-bent on making their female protagonists terrible people? Why are there people that think that's okay? There's a concerning amount of audience members that will perform all sorts of mental gymnastics to justify these characters just because they're women. If a man was grinding hands into paste, they wouldn't be the hero. If a man was using a woman's body for sex without their consent, they wouldn't be the hero. If a man had enslaved and tortured an entire town because he was sad, he wouldn't be the hero. Criticism of these characters is often met with accusations of sexism, and that's not necessarily irrational. It can be easy to see people constantly tearing down female characters and assume that it's because they're female. I'm not trying to make an anti-SJW argument here, and I hope that's clear by now. There are so many female characters that I love, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they're female. They're just great characters. And that's the problem with the new trend. These characters have little intrinsic value outside of their gender. They are both marketed and interpreted as inspirational purely by way of existing and doing action things. Hey, do you have a vagina? Well, so does she. Can I have money now? It seems that Hollywood has created a checklist. Include a female, make her powerful, strong, often beyond reason, and independent of men. Make the message as narratively overt as possible, and profit. This is nothing more than a rampant act of tokenism meant to appease a rabid minority of the audience, to whom such aspects are the be-all and end-all, willing to ignore all of the dubious moral consequences. This is often to the detriment of the product, and much to the dismay of people who actually like good stuff. Because when your intention and focus is anything other than quality, the quality will suffer. Perhaps the saddest aspect of this is that it's the representation of women that suffers most. The zeitgeist of strong women is so prevalent in media now that it's become a trope, and a lot of people are sick of it. This can easily manifest in very negative ways, with some critics shifting the blame to diversity itself. And that's not fair. There's no reason that you can't tell great stories whilst empowering women through good character. We've been doing that for decades. But somehow, people act as if characters like Wonder Rapist and Captain Genocide are only now ushering in the age of female inspiration in film. And if you are inspired by these characters, then great. Far be it from me to take that from you. But it's going to be difficult for you to explain why without relying on surface level details. Because as soon as you start digging, the cracks begin to appear. In fact, I see quite a lot of mental gymnastics in efforts to reconcile the criticisms of their heroes, and hey, to each their own. But isn't it better to not have to do that? Isn't it better to look up to someone that you don't constantly have to bend over backwards to defend? Someone you can rely on to be there for their loved ones in their darkest moments. Someone willing to sacrifice everything to help people. Someone with fears to face and weaknesses to overcome. Someone who shows compassion, morality, intelligence, and devotion. Someone meaningful. Someone just. Someone human. Or is it just some chick who can punch hard and does so often?